It is a familiar corporate scenario. A leadership team gathers the company to announce a bold, new growth strategy. They tell managers it is time to be agile, to be entrepreneurial, and to take calculated risks. But look closely at the actual workflow. While the stated strategy demands agility, the reality on the ground tells a different story. Approvals remain tightly centralized. Mistakes are scrutinized publicly, and the performance review system strictly penalizes any short-term dips in revenue, even when teams are investing in those exact long-term opportunities. Middle managers adapt to this environment instantly. Instead of taking risks, they become extremely cautious. They start deferring decisions upward, aggressively clustering into the bottleneck of the actual process to protect their near-term results. The strategy document calls for entrepreneurship, but the system actually rewards risk avoidance. In this environment, acting defensively is not a failure of motivation. It is the most rational response an employee can have. Because an organization's behavioral incentives always overpower its written strategy, the outcome is entirely predictable. Growth stalls, regardless of how ambitious the original plan was. Organizations can still get results under these contradictory conditions. This chart tracks performance over time. Notice the sharp spike early in the timeline. Leaders can force immediate execution by relying heavily on high-pressure tactics, rigid controls, and aggressive numeric targets. But track that same performance over a longer period. The line inevitably hits a hard ceiling, flatlines, and begins a steady downward trajectory. Authoritative pressure buys immediate compliance. What it fails to do is build the autonomous, self-sustaining behaviors required to maintain performance over the long horizon. To understand why that performance drops, we have to look past the strategy decks and focus on the unseen environment that actually dictates behavior. This environment is defined by what we call organizational conditions. Organizational conditions are the tangible mechanics that surround an employee every day. We break this central hub into 4 measurable nodes: leadership priorities, team norms, decision rules, and structural rewards. Employees ignore what the company says. They respond exclusively to what the system rewards, overriding stated priorities for structural reality. When leaders create contradictory conditions, like demanding rapid innovation while aggressively punishing failure, it creates severe cognitive dissonance. To survive, the workforce defaults to self-protection. This reveals a hard truth about corporate culture. Engagement initiatives and values posters cannot fix a risk-averse environment. Culture is the sum of the rigid daily conditions leaders actively enforce. Once that self-protective environment takes hold, the operational symptoms appear quickly. The very first casualty is speed. Decision-making slows to a crawl. Then, clear accountability dissolves. Because no single person wants to be left holding the bag if something goes wrong, responsibility gets diffused across redundant layers of approval. The result is a massive misallocation of corporate energy. Employees exhaust their daily capacity navigating internal bureaucracy, managing stakeholders, and dodging blame, rather than executing the actual strategy. In an environment of high internal friction, any success the company achieves is fragile. It relies entirely on unsustainable, heroic individual efforts to push things across the finish line, rather than a reliable, repeatable system. For leaders looking to actually sustain performance, the first step is to halt the launch of any new initiatives. Instead, you have to ruthlessly audit the organizational environment you already have. This requires asking specific diagnostic questions. What behaviors do current priorities reward? What mindsets are being reinforced through our decision processes? The goal is to uncover the unintended behaviors your current systems are quietly encouraging. When an environment is successfully designed, the friction drops. Trade-offs are explicitly understood by everyone. Performance expectations are completely clear, leaving no ambiguity about what good work actually looks like. This engineered clarity eliminates the need for constant managerial firefighting. It naturally opens up the space for employees to adopt mindsets of genuine ownership and deep productive focus. Designing these conditions is a core, hard skills responsibility of executive leadership. It requires the same discipline as any other operational function. Look at how this final structural model operates. Even the most brilliant strategy is practically useless on its own. It only generates sustained execution when leaders deliberately engineer the daily conditions that make that execution possible.